Hi, this is Lisa Klein again, and welcome back to yet another edition of The Curve with Lisa Klein, which is one of my pet quarantine projects where I interview everybody that I've ever met in my life, but only the geniuses, only the geniuses. And this is a good friend of mine, Mariska, Breland, who is wonderful. And she is a certified genius, as she is a patent-holding inventor of Fuse Ladder, which is a new Pilates piece of equipment that is just very, very, very torturing. Is that the word I should use?
I believe when you took a class, that's how you referred to it.
I did. I referred to it as torture, but I loved it. It was torture.
It was effective.
It was effective torture that you can't wait to go back to, which is very odd. So she's a patent holding inventor. She's an international workshop holder and fitness trainer who goes literally all over the world teaching her classes on Pilates that can be used with neurological patients, which is wonderful. And also for Fuse, for ladder. So you teach those as well. She's famous. Look her up. She's famous all over the place. Everybody knows Mariska. And I wanted her to come on the show to talk to us about resources that people can use at home, because none of us can go out to classes right now.
Because everyone is going a little nuts.
Just a little nuts.
Eating a lot of snacks.
Yes.
I find I'm going to the refrigerator all day. I don't know if you're the same.
I'm not a food, I like food. I run a supper club and I do like to eat well, but I don't really seek out food. Well, I'm actively seeking out food in ways that I never normally do.
Yeah.
Like really.
Yeah, I was never a boredom eater, but I've become a little bit of a boredom eater.
Yeah.
Or at least I visit the fridge just to see if anything new popped up from the last time.
Exactly. And plus we can't go out, so we're cooking for ourselves all the time. So I'm accumulating all this food I never would normally have, which is very funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a whole situation happening over here. So, and I keep meaning to do some of your classes, then I forget how to find you. So that's why I want to get all your resources.
Perfect.
Yes, because I'm doing yoga almost every day, which is good, but I really want to get my core back to where it was at some point in the 80s. I'm just kidding. So I want to talk to you about that. So Mariska, my genius friend, lay it on us. Where should people go to find you and your fantastic Pilates skills?
Well, the easiest one is mariskabreland.com.
That's easy. Okay.
I mean, that's like really the easiest one. So I have multiple online offerings, some of which existed prior to coronavirus, and then others kind of came after coronavirus. So the first thing is, if anybody has a neurological condition, I co-founded a website called theneurostudio.com, and we actually have workouts that are focused on specific neurological disease, such as multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease or stroke. And we have workouts that are divided based on like common neurological issues, such as balance problems, single-sided weakness, spasticity, things like that. So that's like a very niche, but it also works really well for people who might be older and have issues with balance, or just want a workout that's more targeted towards rehab-based workouts. Because a lot of people can't go to their physical therapists these days. And we have workouts that are specifically designed for like upper body rehab, lower body rehab, things like that. For Pilates mat classes, I'm teaching via Zoom through my studio where I still work, which is Fuse Pilates. So I have Zoom classes through there. I teach a mat class on Thursdays at 5:30 and a chair class, which is a piece of Pilates apparatus, at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. And then on mariskabreland.com, I decided I was going to put up Fuse Ladder classes for people who own Fuse Ladders, which you all should. And I also have other Pilates apparatus like Reformer, Chair, Tower, and Cadillac. I don't have mat classes up there currently because so many studios are staying in business by moving their classes from live classes to Zoom classes, including the one I work for. So I didn't really want to be in competition with that. But prior to the coronavirus years, which I feel like we're in year 5 or so now,
At least.
I've taught on a website called Pilates Anytime, and I have a bunch of mat classes and reformer tower chair on there. And if anyone wants to try that for a month, you can use the discount code Breland, which is my last name, and get a month free. So if you need to work your core and want to check out what's on there, it's me, but it's also hundreds of other teachers from around the world who are on there.
Love it. So,
and then I would recommend, and I think a lot of people are doing this now, figuring out some space in your home where you can at least get a mat, have some TheraBands, have some small amounts of workout equipment. Because I'm just lost. Like, you have all these gym people, and they're like, well, I don't have weights, so what am I supposed to do? And I think, you know, like, even YouTube and Instagram are such rich sites of stuff. Like, you can literally just look up, you know, hashtag TheraBand workout, and you can find a ton of resources for things like that.
So for a lot of people who are not used to doing Pilates, I think one thing that might be fun is to just describe how that's different from yoga or other types of workout, because I can, as a physical therapist, I can tell you there's a big difference from working with a genius level person such as yourself and working with other, you know, other sources. One thing that I really love about you is how creative you are with the exercises that you do and what you do. So if you can just speak to that just a little bit. So if people don't know much about Pilates and they want to try it out, just give them a little background.
Well, there's sort of two schools in the world of Pilates. There's classical Pilates, which is really good but not creative. And then there's contemporary Pilates, which is what I teach, which is more going on the basic ideas that Joseph Pilates created. He was an actual person who lived, he was in World War I. He was a German sort of prisoner of war. He was like in an internment camp in England. And then he immigrated to the United States after and opened his studio. And a lot of his inspiration was based on gymnastics, which was part of what his background was. But he had a very set order of things. Like, there's 34 Pilates mat exercises that are taught in the same order. But what they do is they really are full body. Everyone thinks about Pilates as core exercises, but it's really about moving from the center more than it is about just doing ab exercises. Although you will do a lot of ab exercises. But you'll do planks and you'll do push-ups and you'll do things like that as well. So it's much more full body than I think a lot realize. Mm-hmm. And then there's those of us who are more contemporary Pilates teachers who have decided to take what he's done and put our own little spin on it. And there's a little bit of a battle between the classical teachers and the contemporary teachers, but for the most part, we respect each other and each other's differences in what we do. So if you're doing Pilates, first, that there's not just a mat, like you have a yoga mat, and then everything you do. Okay. Yeah. So in yoga, there's a mat, and everything you do is on a mat. So it's all these asanas, and they flow or they don't, and sometimes you'll use props like a yoga block. Well, in Pilates, we have mat work, which is obviously done on a mat. And it is some of the hardest exercises that we have. So if you think that it's a mat class is going to be the easiest class you do, it actually won't be. Because if you're doing like reformer, a lot of the ways the springs work on a reformer machine and the straps is it actually assists you in the exercise. Whereas like on the mat, it's just like you lifting your own body weight. So a lot of times we progress people from doing the equipment to doing the mat work. But in a mat class, you can expect to do stuff like a roll-up, which is sort of like a more intelligent version of a sit-up, and bridges, which is like one of physical therapy's favorite exercises. We have different variations of those, and planks and things like that. And there is a famous Pilates saying that in 5 sessions, you'll feel different. In 10, you'll look different. And in 20, you'll have a whole new body. And I actually do believe that to be true. I think that it works really, really, really quickly. I remember when I started doing Pilates, it was actually after I was into yoga first. And I remember one time I just put my hands on my waist. I was like, huh, there is no squish there where there was squish before. Like it just like firmed everything up. And I am 45 and I'm the same size as I was in high school. So I could definitely speak towards Pilates being like good for toning. I do other things. It's not the only exercise that I do. And I, created ladder, and ladder is harder even than mat. So I think that, finding ways to work out however you can in these times, I think is really important.
So if somebody wants to get into Pilates and they obviously don't have access to the equipment right now, they could do some of the mat classes, just realizing that they're hard. They're a challenge.
Yeah, that they are hard. And I think it's like, it really depends on the teacher and the level of the class, because you can really break things down and make it very accessible to people. On the Neuro Studio, we have exercises for people who are in wheelchairs, and they're Pilates inspired, but they're not like strict Pilates. But that's where my training is. So it's like, I don't venture all that far from that, although I am also into gymnastic strength training, which is harder than Pilates in a lot of ways. So I think that I pull from whatever exercise I've been into at different times, which I feel like any good teacher or practitioner of anything would do. Like, you learn something somewhere else and you're like, well, that's cool. I don't see why I would just leave that over there when I could bring that into my world.
Right. And that's a reformer behind you, right?
That is a reformer behind me. That is, yep. Reformer is sort of the most well-known of the Pilates apparatus. It is not the hardest. I think in some ways, it can be very hard, like the advanced work is very hard. But if I had somebody that had a lot of limitations, I would take them to the ladder, because it's easier to work with them on the ladder than it is to work with them on the reformer. But if I had somebody who had no background in Pilates at all, probably the first thing I would take them to is the ladder or the reformer, because that's, I think, what everyone thinks of when they think of the Pilates apparatus. And it's got a lot of very feel-good exercises on it, like leg circles.
Yes, we love leg circles.
Everyone loves leg circles, except that one client I had once who didn't like them, which is just odd.
That's so strange. Do you have a ladder in your studio down there in your dungeon? Is it possible to have hard to get that on screen?
I do. It's right there. So
beautiful.
It is a machine that attaches to the wall, and it has sliding carriages on the side that you can attach springs to. And that's a very big thing in the Pilates world, is spring resistance. So if you think of like a slinky or any kind of a spring, the more you stretch it, the heavier it gets. So if you're standing closer to the ladder, or the spring is at more of like your height, it would be less difficult to pull than if it's at different levels. But we can set springs so that they're below you or above you. The thing that's cool about spring weight is sometimes it can be supportive. It can help you do an exercise, because sometimes it's like helping to lift you up. And then other times it can be more difficult because you're pushing against the resistance that it creates. But with the ladder, we have a lot of hanging exercises, which I actually think is something that's really missing in most people's workout, is doing something that really elongates the spine and stretches you out, which, and a lot of people have tremendously bad grip strength. So asking people to pull up with their hands, like to climb a ladder or to hang with their hands on the ladder, is really hard for people. That's always the biggest thing when people take a ladder class for the first time that they talk about is hard, is like just climbing it. So
yeah,
it becomes,
I thought that was hard. I thought the hanging was very difficult.
Right. Because
Yeah.
it's like, we just don't do that, although we should.
Should we really? Should we?
Yes. Yes, because when you hang from your arm, it like lengthens all of the connective tissue that gets really tight because we sit at our computers or our Netflix machines like all day long, and then we just get very forward and everything gets super tight. But if you can just stretch everything out, and when you hang, it also helps to separate the vertebra a little bit in your spine, and then it's like a very nice release.
Oh, that's
So
true.
I always have people hang if they can. Some people can't because of like a shoulder injury or something, but I would have a class end with people hanging. Sometimes I make them lift their legs at the same time, which isn't as nice.
Ugh, torture. So I think sometimes that people don't really get about Pilates is how really hard it can be. And again, because
Yes.
even though you're not using weights, you're using, you know, your own body for your own resistance. And then with the machines, you have the springs for resistance as well. So, but all the exercises are done, they're designed in such a thoughtful way to strengthen you up that
and it's like everything, and everything, it becomes a progression. So Pilates has handstands, it has back walkovers, it has flips that you flip yourself upside down on the Cadillac, which is another piece of equipment that we have. And it's like, you don't start there, you know, but it's like, as you build up strength in different areas, then all of a sudden these very difficult, kind of crazy, more circus looking exercises become achievable.
So if somebody wanted to get into Pilates and they wanted to do that during this time when they're at home and they started with the mat exercises, that would actually make it so they when they did do the other equipment, they would actually do better because they've done the hardest first in a way.
And I think it would also, they would have the muscle memory of what we would ask them to do in like a reformer class. Because a lot of the exercise, we always say there's only, you know, 6 or 7 shapes in Pilates. We make different shapes, and those shapes are repetitive on different apparatus and in different exercises on the mat. So it's like, well, this one, you know, if you're making like a V shape, you just flip it over and you're in a V shape in a different way, or sometimes you're in a side V shape. But we have less shapes, I think, than yoga. I think yoga is more about like twisting yourself into different shapes. And you do improve your flexibility in Pilates, but what we're really trying to do is have active range of motion rather than passive range of motion. So like in yoga, you a lot of times get passive range of motion. So if I hang in a forward fold for an extended period of time, I could get more hamstring length in that passive range of motion. But we don't do passive range of motion stretching in Pilates. Everything we do is dynamic range of motion. So you would get greater hamstring strength by taking your leg and lifting it up towards you with your abs, and then moving your leg around and then doing a roll up where you reach forward past your feet and then lower yourself back down. But we're not like hanging out in that forward fold. We're moving through things. And Pilates in general is like a flowing practice. Like we don't have a lot of stops and starts. And that would be different from yoga depending on what type of yoga you do. Like I definitely lean towards liking a vinyasa type of yoga class because it flows, which is what for me is what like a workout should be. But then when I work out with my trainer, it's like things are really hard, and it's like you do a set of something and then you take a break for a minute, and then you do a set of something and you take a break for a minute, because it's very important when you're doing stuff that's like your maximum capacity weight, which is not something you do in the Pilates world, that you have a rest period. But we don't do that. We just kind of keep things moving. And the way I like to teach a class is I like to work people to exhaustion in one area and then ease off and move to something else. And then we might come back to that area again and work people to exhaustion and then move on. So it becomes like almost like cardio in that way, that it's like we're getting your heart rate up. I don't do any cardio, but I do cardio because my workouts are ththings that get your heart rate up, which is essentially what cardio is. I'm an avid non-runner.
I'm with you on that. Although I'm trying to run. I don't know. It's not, well, whatever.
I feel like now you have to have a mask on your face. That makes it harder to breathe.
You know, it's not fun. So yeah, I'm with you. So is Pilates something that you could do every day, or is it something that you should do if you're going to do that type of workout and then have a day in between?
I think you can, like, I can do it every day. You can probably do it every day. I feel like if somebody's very deconditioned and they're coming into it and they, you know, they're like going from like not working out at all to doing Pilates, I feel like you would be too sore to do it every day, in which case then I would take like a rest day in between, because I do think rest is very important. I'm a really big believer in you should move every day, like whatever that looks like. I do Pilates about 3 or 4 times a week, and then I do like strength workouts like twice a week, and then I take 1 day off. And then I try to walk most days.
Right.
Unless it's really cold or really hot or really rainy or in any other way, like not perfect. Yeah. But if it's perfect, then I try to walk or near perfect. And then I'll try to walk like every day.
You have to have standards. That's understands. All right.
Right.
That's cool. This is great. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Just words of wisdom, or as someone who is a fitness professional and many people are kind of shooting towards increasing their fitness since we're all home right now?
Well, I think the most important thing is to find something you like. You know, I did not like gym class. There was 2 sports, I guess, that I liked when I was a child, and that was tennis. And I was on the tennis team, and I liked swimming. And I did not like softball, basketball, volleyball, track, soccer, anything in those family of sports I hated. So I hated gym class. So for me, it's like a big plot twist that I ended up being in the fitness business. But then when I started doing like yoga and Pilates and things, I like really loved them. So there's actually some study that I read once that said only about 30% of people actually enjoy exercise. But, and that the majority of people's first rejection in life was sports related. So a lot of people have these very interesting feelings about sports and working out. So they're going into it with negative feelings in general. So my thing is that Pilates might not be right for you. Yoga might not be right for you. Softball was not right for me. But like, if you give things a chance and try lots of things, chances are there will be something that your body is naturally good at. My body was not naturally good at Pilates. So that was my body was naturally good at yoga. And then I started doing Pilates to get better at yoga, because they're very complementary practices. Because if you have stronger core, then you can do more like the arm balances and handstands and things like that. But if people can go into things with sort of an open mind of like, let me try this, and know that I hated Pilates the first time I did it. So sometimes you have to give something more than one chance. And I hated it because I wasn't good at it. And that's very frustrating to me, to be not good at something. But finding something that you like and are good at, that is like what makes people stick with the workout.
I like that. Sounds great. This has been super helpful.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I was partially selfishly motivated because I'm like, where do I go from? Like, I want the resources to know where I can start doing workouts with you, since I miss you so much.
Yes.
So, but this will be great. And then, yeah, I really appreciate this. We'll get all the resources from you. We'll put them on the description of the video. So
perfect.
Nice.
And I hope to see you soon when we come out of this.
Yes.
Weird thing we're in.
Hopefully very soon.
Good.
All right. Talk to you later. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.